Welcome to another Friends in Wonder podcast, a place where we invite you to wonder with us about meaningful topics without judgment or limits. Brought to you by two lifelong friends looking for insights through a lens of how can this help?
I'm Joe Luther.
And I'm Vince Kern, and we're your hosts. Now let's wander and wonder together.
Okay, June 23. We've just finished a couple of our podcast additions or offerings to the world.
Nice morning, and a very morning in very much alignment. It's funny, I was going to ask you what the date was today. It's also 2022, so it's June 23rd, 2022.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here in the Birmingham studio, and you know, we enjoy as human beings the opportunity to have an immensely meaningful experience while we're on this little ball riding around at 17.3 miles per second. And the sun sustains us, the water sustains us, our loved ones sustain us. We've got both of us, and humans are blessed with many people around them. And this is an interesting time for us. Things happen in life, and you're about to undergo something that is, kind of a
somewhat invasive.
Somewhat invasive surgery. Yes, thank you. You don't have to pry it out of you because you're the guy that's going through it. But it's, to talk about it is a little bit difficult. Yeah. And you wanted to kind of talk about.
Yeah, I figure as long as we're laying things down in audio form, I thought it would be a good idea to, just talk about it. If nothing else, it'll be interesting for me to look back on 20 years from now to listen to and see where my head was at.
Yeah.
Maybe, it's a little bit of a time capsule for me.
Yeah. Time capsule of how you're feeling. So I can't, people always say, I understand what you're going through. And you know what? Nobody really can.
I don't understand what I'm going through. But what I think is funny is, you talk to the surgeons and you'd think you're talking to somebody about changing the muffler in your car. It's just like, oh yeah, well, we do this and we do that and we do that. And I've heard, I've got a few doctors. Okay, did I say what I'm doing? Yeah, we know what I'm doing. I'm doing open heart bypass surgery. They call it some sort of graft creation. I don't know. There's a acronym they have for it that I've been seeing on all my pre-test forms called CABG, CABG. And I looked at them when they first used it. CABG.
That's quite a metaphor.
That's the acronym for what I'm getting. CABG. The classic one. And to be honest, I've had to think about this since I was in my mid-30s because, actually a little before that because my mom died when I was 26, and before she died, as part of her medical, therapy and procedures, the doctors asked, do you have children, and have they been tested to see if they have a similar condition? And so we all did, and I found out so before she died at age 26 that I had a very similar genetic predisposition to the condition she had, which is hypocholesteremia. And that means that it doesn't matter literally what I eat or do. My cholesterol is, off the charts. Interestingly, a professional tennis player, from the 70s, Arthur Ashe, had it the way my mom had it. So there's like heterozygous and homozygous. And I think heterozygous homozygous is the worst, where it means somehow she has it. She's got the double gene, and I just only got half of it, which might be the heterozygous. But anyhow, Arthur Ashe and she had the same thing. So when she was a thin woman, obviously Arthur Ashe was a very fit and trim person. He was, you remember him, right? He was a great tennis player. Both of their cholesterols in a normal day, was in the 600s. And mine in a normal day, even on a vegetarian diet, I went through all sorts of, therapies trying to get it under control, but, is normally in the 400s, the mid 400s. So I guess I got a little luckier than her, but, where I wasn't as lucky is that, women have some sort of a predisposition to, protection against arterial sclerosis until after their menopause. So my mom, kind of skated through her dad died in his late 20s, I think. So, who knows what he had? We don't know a lot about him because there's kind of there's some mystery behind him, but, clearly there was bad genetics on their side of the family because her two half siblings don't have, the same condition. So, probably passed down from her dad and probably was part of the reason why he died young. But, so anyhow, I had it half as bad. And so, but I've known that I've had it since,
For
way
a
back
long
then.
time, yeah.
And then, in my mid 30s, when the kids were, coming along, I think my wife at the time, Karen, was, pregnant with Stephanie, and, side note, to give you an idea of the stress she was going through. She was pregnant with Stephanie, 8 months pregnant with Stephanie when her dad died. And at the time I was facing, I had first been diagnosed with, these heart blockages, all during that time. So, and I think we were moving. Yeah. I mean, throw all that together for a pregnant woman of 8 months. But that's while Stephanie was, 8 months term. But, so anyhow, and I was in my mid 30s, and we worked on it multiple times, and they told me then, because there were like 6 blockages and I was having a lot of symptoms. But I was dealing with a cardiologist who I was begging. He was a great cardiologist. Karen found him for me. His name's, William O'Neill. And, he told me at the time, said, well, you got 6 blockages and, this was after an angiogram. We probably are going to take 2 procedures to clear those up. And most likely there's going to be some form of restenosis from scarring afterwards. Back then, they hadn't even developed stents. So it was just balloon angioplasty. I was just begging him, I don't want bypass surgery at this age, because at the time, bypass surgery only lasted for, 20, 25 years max. Some people less. And I thought, well, geez, what kind of life expectancy? And I got little kids.
Yeah. You're 30 some years old.
A wife who's pregnant. Right. And I, so I'm like, whatever we can do, let's not do that, because I don't want to get on that roller coaster ride at 35 years old. So anyhow, fortunately he was able, it went exactly like he said, two procedures, and then had to come back a few months later because there were, maybe a year later, 6 months later, to take care of the restenosis. But he told me at that time, he said, you know what? He says, if this doesn't work, I may be recommending you for bypass surgery. He says, but I got some good news. And I've been one of the pioneers of it. He says, there's this new thing called stents. And he explained to me that, I think everyone knows what a stent is, so I'm not going to waste time on that. But they're like these little springs.
I remember hearing about it for the first time. I was like, wow.
Yeah, right.
Cool.
And I thought, well, that sounds good. Because a lot of what was happening is you'd use these balloons and they would open up the artery, but they would almost like when you pull on underwear too hard.
Stretch
it. They kind of get flimsied a little bit, and they collapse and
fall. The
back.
Underwear falls around your knees, and you go out, and it's a bad scene.
Embarrassing. Well, it's a different kind of embarrassment. But anyhow, so these little things kind of are like little, springs that lock into place. So anyhow, I said, let's try that. And he says, if that doesn't work, he says, you got to get bypass surgery. Well, frickin' thank God and hallelujah for Dr. William O'Neill and him being a pioneer of those things. Because literally there weren't any. If I would have been going to another cardiologist at the time, it would have been very hit or miss, but probably more likely I would not have gotten away with not getting bypass surgery then. So anyhow, did the stents, they worked, and I'm sure you remember I ran a marathon after that.
I do.
And, things went good, and then along come the 50s, and probably the stress of knowing that I was having some life-changing things going on, but whatever. Went through a divorce and got back on the treadmill of needing to take care of some blockages. And for whatever reason, I guess because now that I'm older, turns out these things, the stents didn't work as well. They were closed. I think it was hit or miss. Some of them were, and some of them weren't. And I think over the last 7 years, I may have had 4 or 5 procedures. And this last one, when he went in to look, my right main had closed 100%. And my left main, which he had stented before, by the way, that was pioneering work too. There were very few cardiologists even stenting the left main. They graciously call that vein the widowmaker. Because if you have a problem on the left main, apparently it feeds 2/3 of your heart, and you don't survive problems from that. So anyhow, when he was in there most recently, my right main had 100% closed at a point where he had put a stent in, and my collateral arteries were keeping me alive. That's why I didn't have a heart attack. But he said that the thing that had him concerned was my left main was showing signs of closing again. So that's why he suggested bypass surgery. And, first I took that as a, kind of like I was depressed. I took it as a sign of failure. I as you know, I'm in very good health. I've been, watching what I eat and my exercise and yoga and meditation and spirituality. And I'm married to the woman of, the best person I could possibly be married to now in my life. And, and we're just in a great place. And so I'm thinking, why? I don't understand why these things are still closing. And so I got depressed at first. And then after I kind of grieved that, so anyhow, that was probably, I know what it was. It was April 29. And here it is. June 23rd is when he told me he thinks I need it.
Almost only 2 months. That's not a long time.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. But at first I thought, well, he's an interventionalist. And I, me, I'm a non-conventional Western medicine believer. And I readily stand in line for it when I need it because they're very good at interventions. I don't think they're as good with preventative care, especially the way they dole out medications and sometimes jump into procedures when you don't need it. So I always have been, suspicious of him. That's why I had a second cardiologist. I'm not suspicious of him. I'm grateful for him. But I mean, I always want a second opinion. Like, is there something non-invasive that I can do? After grieving a little bit, I decided to find out, what other people think and talked to my non-interventional cardiologist. And he looked at the written report and said, yeah, he says, as much as I'd like to tell you no. He said, but he did say, Joe, you're the perfect candidate to get this. And you've gotten to the place in medical science now where it's like bread and butter. And he says, I know easy for me to say because I'm not the one getting it, but he says, these doctors are so good at it now and the technology is so good. And now we know, years ago we used to use veins. Now we're using arteries, and the kinds of arteries that they use now are, from somewhere in the sternum area that I guess are close enough match that, they actually kind of become like the old ones, the main arteries, especially. So what he told me is that they'll probably take 2 arteries from that area and place them in the left main and the right main. And that's kind of like, now they're knowing because they've been using these arteries for almost 20 years now. They're not having problems with them. Like there's 100% success rate. Maybe some people are, but those who live good lifestyles, it's a complete cure. Whereas the veins that they were using in the old days only last for so long. So anyhow, so when after I heard that, I thought, wow, I still would like to hear. There was another second opinion I was getting from a doc in Dallas, and that was through a friend of mine. Walter. He's a friend of mine as well. Now he's a neurosurgeon. You've met him at Walter's funeral, and and I even talked to the surgeon. That they were recommending in Detroit here, and I asked him, point blank, do I need this now, or is there something I could wait till a long time from, like, what about my collaterals and all that? And he said, the problem is that the longer you wait, the more likely it is that I might not even be able to do successful surgery on you, because the places where I want to graft from and to will become more and more, compromised, I guess. They just kind of shrink or wither because they're not getting fed the proper blood pressure that they need.
They're not strong roots.
Yeah. And so, he said, basically, I wouldn't wait much longer than a couple of months to get this done. So, anyhow, but I also asked him, I said, well, look, I could go to the Cleveland Clinic. I could go to the Mayo Clinic. Like, I understand you're from the Cleveland Clinic. Like, why wouldn't I want to go to the Cleveland Clinic? And he said, I was at the Cleveland Clinic, and I can tell you right now, they're great doctors there, great surgeons. But you're going to have multiple people probably during the operation. They're probably all good, but some of them are going to be learning. But with me, you're going to get me from beginning to end. And he says, I was at the Cleveland Clinic for 10 years. So you're getting a Cleveland Clinic surgeon. It's just that this is where I am now. And he was referred to me by Dr. O'Neill, who I, trust, obviously with my life, because he's been caring for my life for a long time. And he helped me making these decisions along the way. And he said that he'd let his mother, go to this guy. And that's what all the other cardiologists say. So, a guy that can be there from beginning to end and be in Detroit and, make things a lot more convenient. So anyhow, I shifted somewhere along the lines of there. And when I talked to my non-interventional cardiologist, to just a sense of surrender and gratitude, because then I really began to see, wow, when my mom died, she didn't have access to this, and when I was 35, I didn't have access to this. And people today who do have access to this sometimes have multiple other problems. Maybe their heart disease was caused by diabetes, and, they got, kidney failure or whatever. Like, there could be all sorts of other things going on. And I have this super healthy body. And that's what my non-interventional cardiologist was trying to tell me. He's like, you are such a perfect candidate for this. Technology is so good. You are going to bounce back from this, and it's going to be like a whole new lease on life. You can literally stop worrying about your heart arteries.
Which you've been doing for 30 some years now.
Yeah. I've been kind of living like with a cloud, and especially the last 7 or 8, even though I've had all these good things going on in my life, I still wonder, talk about the good things in my life. Sonia coming into my life. I sold a business. I've got all this good health, and my children are doing well. Like, all these good things going on. I'm in this new house in a beautiful neighborhood. I've got an opportunity now to travel, and all these great things are happening. And now I'm as healthy as can be, and I'm being given this opportunity to stop living with this, kind of cloud that I've had around me. And so now I'm really, the surgery is 6 days from now, and I'm really kind of entering into this, this sense of surrender to spirit, surrender to, all of my spirit guides and animal guides, and, surrender to the surgeon, surrender to, modern medicine, but also gratitude to modern medicine, especially Western medicine, which, I sometimes, defame. I'm grateful, totally grateful for my health, and in all of, you think of, Vince, when you think of, this is a wonder and awe, thing to think about. When you think about all of our ancestors, the supposed cavemen and the hunter gatherers and all of those people that had to, dodge saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths and whatever it is to survive enough to create offspring that created offspring that created offspring, and then went through, the Inquisitions and the Dark Ages and, Roman conquest. All of our ancestors came through all of that. And then modern medicine, and all of the things that got Joe Luther to this point in life where he has, these tools in this healthy body with, all of the things that he knows about the universe thanks to the internet and all these things. Like, how can I not be anything more than grateful for what I'm about to do? And quick story, Uncle Ralph.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lot of enjoyable. He's my mom's brother, who's I think he's 81 now, and he would be the male equivalent of a spinster. Although he has been married and he does have kids.
Brilliant man.
Yeah. I always tease him that because it was his aunt. It was my great aunt. She was a spinster, Aunt Therese, and I always tease him that he's Aunt Therese. But I love him. He's my godfather, and I called him on Godfather's Day or Father's Day and talked to him and told him what was going on, and I've helped him through hip surgery. Yeah. And you know how he can be. He can be pearls of wisdom, and just keep giving you more and more of it. And I love him for that. And he said to me, he says, I know it's not the same thing at all, but I avoided the hip replacement surgery for a long time because I was just so worried about all of those minimal complications that could happen. And I know that 9 out of 10 go very, very well. But what about the 10th one? I keep thinking, and here I am living this independent life. And so he always just pushed it off. And he said after he was coming out of anesthesia from having it done, he knew at that moment that it was a success. He just knew for some reason. He said it felt like angels were singing. And he said he just had this feeling of awe and rapture that this thing that he had been fearing for so long was unworthy of fear, and that he was just in this place of grandeur and love and gratitude for having it done. And you want to hear him talk about gratitude, you should hear him talk about his surgeon. He ended up having an emergency afterwards and getting the other one done, and the stars aligned that day for him to get the same surgeon in an emergency scenario. But he said the anesthesia for that was a little different coming out of that one than the first time. But I appreciated that story because that's kind of where I want to get to when this surgery is over, is this idea of the angels singing, metaphorically or literally, and the spirits singing. And I think they will. I think they'll be singing before. I think they're singing now, right, if I would just open up to it.
Well, that's, if I might say, one of the things that I've, maybe not when we were younger, riding around on our bikes being mischievous, but one of the things that I have always admired about you is when you decide to do something, or even when you haven't decided to do something, you do your homework, you're balanced about it. You look at all sides. You look at every argument for, every argument against. You try to live your life in a very balanced, meaningful way. And watching you go through this experience, watching you plan a trip, watching you, do very important things. I've watched you gather all the facts. I've watched you, look at it from not just a scientific way or a personal way, and now, you've done that, and it does feel like the angels are starting to sing. It feels like they're all gathering. Your friends, myself, for me, it's watching this. And, when you tell a friend you're going to do something like this, for me, it was right off the bat, crying out loud. Why is this guy got to go through this? He takes good care of himself. Blah, blah,
that's
blah.
your love and empathy for me.
Yeah, but you work through that and you say, but the cool thing is you did all this research and work and talk, and you have all this knowledge and information, and it makes other people feel at ease as well,
Yeah.
so that we can take this journey with you in a sense. And I think the goal for me, and I want to get to, a question, right? The goal for me is to be able to just be calm and collected and in love and just send energy as it's needed.
I definitely get that from you. And we talked about how you can help support. It's funny when you were talking, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll let you get back to your point, but I thought of something. We just did a Safety First podcast.
Right.
And I was thinking, when you were kind of explaining how I weighed, the pros and cons of things, this is a perfect example to drive the point home about our Safety First podcast. It's like, there might be a little bit of balancing going on here when you're talking about somebody cutting open your chest, pulling it apart, and working on your heart. But I'm doing it because it makes good sense to do it. And I'm doing it with a sense of wonder and awe. And I'm also doing it knowing that it's going to help me be a better person. And so the whole point about what Uncle Ralph said and where I'm trying to get, as I approach the last few days, and I don't even know what it's going to be like, how I'm going to sleep the night before the surgery, but I hope to be at a place of peacefulness because I believe when I come out of that anesthesia, I don't know, it's probably going to be a little heavier anesthesia than what he went through, but at least when I come back to my sense of awareness, I'm even before that. I just feel like I have got the opportunity now to live life without a cloud on my head, around my head, and to not limit myself because of some lingering concern that, I'd like to take on, a challenge like that right now in my life. But I don't know if that's such a good idea given, my heart condition. I can put all that out of my way.
Right.
And again, not live in fear, not live in this idea of I need to be safe. I can live like the children do.
Right. So do you feel at peace? How are you feeling? So you got, this is
I'm almost there. The other part of this is that, I'm married to a immensely sensitive empath who is just unbelievably supportive to me. I am so blessed to have her in my life and so metaphorically puzzled to understand why I'm having difficulties with, heart issues, while in a relationship with her. I do have an interesting, explanation for that because Spirit told me the answer to that. And it kind of comes from, a little comment that people will make once in a while when they hear, that I have, issues that say, oh, you got a bad heart. I defend my heart every time and say, the hell I do. I've got a great heart. This heart has been dealing with all of these procedures and sometimes blockages, growing collateral arteries. And by the way, as a part of this procedure, I got a test done, an echocardiogram where they test the valves, and the surgeon said, oh yeah, he says, while we're in there, we'll probably fix any of faulty valves you have. If there's anything even like kind of half off, we'll just replace it while we're in there because it doesn't make sense to let it go. Get an echocardiogram, we'll see. I came back 100%. Everything's fine. As far as I know, that's what I was told anyhow. And that's what the report said. Maybe he'll see something different when he goes in. But I mean, my heart has been good. It's got good muscle. It's got good everything. It's functioning perfectly. It's just been what I've been feeding the heart. The blood vessels go into the heart, and you want to take a metaphor there. Living in fear is what kind of blocks us from living in love and living, with our heart, living in my head space, which is what I've been doing for such a long time. I don't want to get into all that right now, but I've been living, slightly in fear like we all do, based on issues that I've been working on through therapy and all sorts of healing and in my relationship with Sonia and all of that. I feel like I've got kind of, behind me now, or, I'm not perfect yet, but at least now I'm going to give this opportunity to feed my heart with new vessels, feed my heart with what we're doing in this podcast effort, with any kind of venture that I want to do going forward.
You're going to be a monster when you're done with this. We're not going to be able to keep you.
I might even be able to learn how to chip in golf.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, really.
But so listen, I've known your family for a long time. You've got a what, I'm trying to think of the number, but you've got three children. You've got a big family,
three siblings, nephews and nieces,
lots of
and all
friends. You know,
that, yeah. No, I'm blessed.
What if you could say anything? I mean, right now it's always, if you could say anything to all of those people.
Well, I mean, it's morbid, but I do want to say this, just in case. And you can you can edit this out. We can edit this out if the just in case isn't necessary. But having just gone through the death of Walter, a very close friend who's like a brother, was like a brother. I know you didn't have as much of a relation. I mean, you had a brother-like relationship with him too, and you've known him for really as long as I have. It's just that, you
guys were very close.
A different kind of like we talked about in our friend podcast. It's a different kind of best.
Yeah, and Father Paramount.
Yeah, and that was all intertwined.
And your dad.
Yeah, and but anyhow, having gone through it and seen it, and then gone through his funeral and listening to the multiple eulogies really that were given by friends that gathered together, it's okay. It's okay if this is it, because I have been blessed, and it's not cliche blessed. It's like beyond measure blessed with the relationships I had. That includes with Karen, who I divorced, because, we accomplished a lot together. My kids, I couldn't be more proud of. Every friend that I have, I mean, I've got, thank God, one of the reasons that Sonia and I, when we got married, wanted to keep it small is I couldn't pick a best man. Like that would have been impossible.
Right.
Fortunately, you and Paul were there and one of my children were there. It was in the middle of a pandemic. So we kept it small anyhow. But, no, I've just been blessed with so many people in my life, and I've lived life, I don't want to use the pejorative with privilege, but I've been privileged to live life in the United States of America with plenty of opportunities, and I feel like I've taken those opportunities and I've run with them, and I've been blessed with abundance, with the talents that I have and the willingness to go out and do it, and even though I might criticize some of the things my parents did, I had great parents, who obviously did a great job, so I have nothing but gratitude in my life. So, I know I'm not going to be that 99.9 out of 1,000 that doesn't come out of this. But if I do, I'm at peace. I'm at total peace.
That's got to be, I mean, wow. To just try and answer that question, of what would you say to people? I mean, you probably say different things to different people because, like you said, we have different relationships and different ways of communicating with all our friends. But the one thing that everybody feels, and it's interesting when you go through something like this, whether especially if you're the person who's having the surgery, regardless of what it is, to watch all the dynamics at play, and everybody channels their love in such meaningful ways, but they're all different. And so it's, and like what I was getting at before is it seems like you've worked yourself through, all this whole process. And now it's like, let's get on the ice. It's time to get on the ice.
Yeah. If they called me right now and said, "Hey, we just had a cancellation. You want to come in today?" I would go in today. I mean, I'm ready. I really am ready for it. But I'm also looking forward to having a few more days to just continue getting into a better place of gratitude. That's the only place I want to be right now, is in a place of gratitude, because that is where I am right now.
You probably need some quiet, like, the news and all those other things just kind of become.
And just be with Sonia, And I was starting to, talk about her. I want to spend time where we're just at peace with this whole thing, so that when I go in, I'm the most, receptive organism, complex organism that surgeon can work on. And I think I am. I'm actually, very much looking forward to what it's going to be like on the other side of this.
Yeah, you'll probably feel better physically. I mean, you'll have more stamina.
I think so.
You might even be able to hike further than Paul.
Won't be able to use any excuses anymore, that's for sure.
You might even be able to keep up with Paul for that matter.
God knows, probably not.
Oh, man. Oh, this is such a deep and it's amazing that you're brave enough to just sit down and talk about this.
Well, no, seriously. I mean, the reason I did this is not really to put together a podcast, but to, just have something that, somebody can, if somebody wants to, they can listen to it,
Well, you got a lot of proud things. You've accomplished a lot. As a person. And I think the reason people accomplish things in business or in whatever it is that is, of the world, so to speak, is because they're accomplished at looking at themselves and treating others the way they would like to be treated. And,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, if people were to say, what would you want written on your tombstone in one word? Man, I would struggle, but I think the one word that comes to my mind would be optimist, because whenever you approach any situation, you can look at it, from a negative standpoint, or you can look at it from a positive standpoint. We can say that the earth is an unmitigated mess, or we can say that the earth is, the greatest miracle in the universe. And maybe both are true, but I prefer to look at just the latter and not, I will recognize the messes, but in reality, it is true. There isn't a mess. It's just our perception would make it a mess, because it is. All you have to do is ask an astronaut that's had an opportunity to stand back and look at it. Right. And it is nothing but a miracle. And I consider my life as nothing but a miracle. And so I am very grateful. And, that's pretty much where I want to leave it.
Well, thanks for being brave enough to sit down and do this.
My pleasure. Thank you for helping me.
Well, so ends another episode of Friends in Wonder. We want to thank you for listening. If you'd like to listen to more episodes, provide feedback, questions, or topics you'd like us to wonder about in future episodes, be sure to check us out at friendsinwonder.com. We'd be grateful if you subscribe, like, or share this podcast. Until next time,
I'm Joe.
And I'm Vince, and we're Friends in Wonder.